Hi, I'm Molly Barnes. My guest today is Mauro Caputo, a designer extraordinaire. He started doing perfume packaging. In fact, there's a little museum in Beverly Hills that is dedicated to his perfume packaging and all the things he's done for Narelle, for Charles Revson, for Revlon, for Oil of the Turtle, Polly Bergen, for Priscilla Presley. And late in life, at least he would not like to hear that, but later in his life he's become a fine artist. So today we'll cover the whole spectrum and find out how he got started and what's happened in the last couple of years. Hi Mauro, welcome.
Hi Molly, thank you for having me on this program.
Well, I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah.
How did it get started? How did you become a designer, and when did you first realize you wanted to do it?
Well, at 4 I started drawing, so I've always been an artist. You know, Saturday mornings my mother would take me to an art class, and I did that right from the beginning. That's what I wanted to do.
You lived in New York. Were there other people in your family who were artists? Was there somebody you emulated?
My great-grandfather was a sculptor in Italy. He would do some of the statues for the church. And the other creative people in the family were either violinists or cellists. They were, one cousin was in the Philharmonic, so I'm the first artist that came out.
And why did you go into commercial design work rather than fine art?
I had so much art at Parsons School of Design, it ended up at NYU, and they said, no more art, you have to get a Bachelor of Science. And I thought I'd be teaching. I had a small apartment in the village and paint. And I ran into Enrico Donati, and he had a packaging design firm which involved itself in cosmetic packaging, perfume bottles, and liquor bottles. I saw the third dimension and fell in love.
You're kidding, really?
Yeah.
What were some of the bottles you did for him?
Well, actually, we didn't do, well, Four Roses. We did a lot of decanters for Seagrams at that time. Liquor packaging and cosmetic packaging everybody wanted to be involved in that kind of packaging because it was the creative part. You know, food was just photography at that time. I guess I always wanted to be an artist, so what happened was at that time I combined my love for art and design. Certainly I wanted to make some money. And a couple of my famous artists that I really followed were Pollock and Alberto Burri in Italy and Brock. I loved collage. A lot of my work, in fact, early paintings were wood collages.
Why did you like Burri so much? He's the one that cuts into the paper, isn't he?
He was actually a surgeon, and he stitched his paintings in burlap. And when you looked at it, you thought, God, he's operated on the painting, and that's basically what got me involved in, well, first of all, textures, you know, relief from the surface, that's really got me cooking. I had been an illustrator, and that was all flat, you know, pretty much flat design. And then between packaging and, you know, even Pollock, you know, the thickness of the paint, and actually, Brock was really the first one that I looked at. Again, I guess it must be Cubism, that, you know, Cubism, collage, and texture, that's what I'm about.
It's funny, when Picasso was always rivaling artists, but when he wanted to learn, he would get behind someone. And in Brock's case, they started working together on collage. Brock stayed there, and then Picasso got bored and moved on. What is it that appeals to you about collage work?
I think there's a certain freedom where you can tear and pull or cut, and or you can build up with paint. There's a freedom. I remember just early on, a few years ago, I thought, I need to free myself up because I was a package designer. I would design bottles. So I took a painting class, and I found out I don't want to paint. I want to collage. So that's what I ended up doing in this class. But really, it was a painting class, so I'm back in my own studio doing my own collage.
Now, what was it like in New York, living there when you were young in those days, when Jackson Pollock was just starting to hit as a famous artist and change the course of art history in this country?
Well, first of all, there were fewer artists, so, you know, you could always get a job, you know. You didn't make a lot of money in art. But at that time, you could live. I could live in the village. I had only one little room apartment with no kitchen. You know, you had a hot plate. but you could live. You know, you could take the subway, you could go to Louis and have some beers, and somehow you could exist. And that's the way it was with the abstract expressionists, which, you know, that was really what got me cooking. Out of Parsons, they sent you to museums and galleries, and Pollock, for some reason, just turned me. I didn't know what the hell he was doing at 18 years old, but I got turned on. In fact, I used to imitate him, and I did a Pollock painting for a friend of mine, and he had you know, in the basement, we would always, in the East, we would convert the basement to a playroom or a party room, and there was, and I think it's still there.
Well, Jackson Pollock, when he came around, did people laugh and say, "You call this art? This is just doodling or scribbling"?
My friends did, but you know, I was totally involved in the design and gallery scene at that time. So I didn't run into people. You know, I was young. I didn't go out to fancy places, so I didn't know what the people were saying.
Did you copy fine artists? For example, you always hear that designers copy unconsciously what's in the art world at this time.
Basically, that's what I'm telling you. I've been looking at fine art before I started designing. In fact, some of my bottle designs come from ARP and Moore. They still, I mean, Nevelson, you know, my painting is like a Nevelson. Yes, I do look at, you know, famous fine artists today.
Now, you worked for Charles Revson. What was that like? Revlon, you were designing there.
It was a nightmare. It was, you know, you'd work till 11 o'clock at night. You go out for a 3-martini lunch. I can remember one time we had a meeting, and he called the meeting at 9 o'clock. And
in the morning or at night?
At night. And we didn't get into the meeting till 10, and there was his barber. So they were cutting his hair while we're having this meeting till 11:30 at night. And this went on all the time. It turns out I think I made 50 cents an hour working for Charles Revson.
Was it worth it?
But it was brilliant. He was brilliant.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. He was a brilliant merchant. He just could smell what was going on. You know, he'd always have like 10 colors of lipsticks on his hands, and he lived, ate, and slept the cosmetic industry, and that's what I learned. That's where I really learned how to get involved in, you know, whether it be lipstick packaging or fragrance packaging or perfume shapes, or, you know, it was a ton of work, and I was young, and all we did was work.
What brought you to California?
Interesting enough, in high school, I always wanted to go west. In fact, this friend of mine and I were going to, I had a Model A Ford. We were going to paint it in Scotch plaid and see if Scotch tape would pay our way across country. You know, because we were high school. It was like.
You mean if the Scotch tape company actually?
Yeah, so we'd advertise cross country, and that never did come to pass. But I've always wanted to come west. And my first job, I ended up quitting after 2 weeks and saying I'm going to California with my trombone and my art, and then that fell through. But it's always been a desire. So when I had the opportunity to come out with Polly Bergen and Oil of the Turtle, I said...
Now, she was an actress who got this idea. Was there really something to Oil of the Turtle?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was natural oil. Certainly, there was a lot of promotion, and she had a name, and at that time married to Freddie Fields, so there was a little, you know, it was like a movie set. You know, it was wonderful. You know, I come from New York, and all I had seen was movies. You know, and you know, those sets that you see where people would live next door to each other, and it was that way in Beverly Hills at that time in the '60s. And I just fell in love, and I met all the actresses, and I mean, it was fun.
Would you play bridge rather than work?
Well, I guess I can tell a story. During the day, we would have these meetings in the boardroom and at her office, and no one could come in. And what were we doing? We were having a glass of scotch playing bridge. I mean, we'd get calls from New York, hold the calls. You know, for the next 2.5 hours, that's what we did. We had a ball.
Now, your last job that you've told me about was with Fred Heyman.
Yes.
in Beverly Hills. Was
Right.
that another Beverly Hills hype kind of operation?
In a different way. We had our own chef at the office, and we could have lunch. All we had to do is sign him and say, "Look, I'll be there with this printer for lunch," and it was wonderful. You know.
How has the design world changed since when you came in?
Computers.
What happened?
I think the personal touch, you know, when I was at Revlon, I was creative director of packaging, and So there was a creative director. I don't see creative directors today. In fact, the ones that I meet, for example, at Earthlink and whatnot, are really art directors, and they can work on the computer just like the people that are working for them. The class system has changed. For example, when computers really came in, and a number of years ago knocked all the art directors out of the agency world, you might have 1 or 2 art directors instead of 8, and then a lot of people that can really work the keys on a computer. Creativity, I think, has changed. I think this is a homogenization of look. I can give you examples of some cosmetics that...
Give me an example.
The Gap and Ann Taylor.
Well, what about Ann Taylor, for example?
Okay, let's take the fragrance bottle. They're all very similar.
Really? And
at the point, you have to be a young person to read the type on these bottles. I mean, it's so tiny. I'm looking and I'm saying, well, that's a nice shape, but it looks like the Gap. They all look alike. Well, the stores, you look at the Gap, you look at Banana Republic. It's about marketing and in-your-face marketing and business.
What do you think the trend is now toward design? A unisex look? A free look?
Unisex has never been a... we tried it years ago to do a fragrance that would be unisex, and you know, there's a very small percentage that buy into that. Calvin did it with CK, you know.
Calvin Klein?
Calvin Klein, yes. His ads, you know, you see those ads with the young girls and boys, and they're all using the same fragrance. I don't know if that really, I still think that, you know, women, because of, you know, there are not that many people that are into unisex, and you're talking global, you know, take a fragrance, you know, when you just sell it globally, you're going to sell a lot of flowery fragrances, you know. Like Stetson, which is kind of a mass fragrance. Lady Stetson sells a hell of a lot.
Now, did you do the original Narelle bottle?
I worked with Narelle and Charles Revson and Paul Willard. I mean, there were a lot of us involved in that.
That was always my favorite. I'm so happy to know the man who did that.
I'll tell you a story about that. When they opened at Bonwit Tellers, I mean, they had just finished the fragrances, and at that time, Bonwit Teller had these perfume fountains which would go out into Fifth Avenue, and I was carrying gallons of Narelle for that opening. I didn't get to the opening. I was just a peon, you know, pouring the gallons of fragrance into the fountain.
You're kidding.
No.
Well, life has really changed now. You have decided to become a fine artist. What brought that about?
I think what happened was, you know, industry changed. It's not only cosmetics, but the wine industry. It became so global that you know, it's run by accountants. There's a bottom line. They do a lot of business.
I think we're about to see some of your works.
Well, thank you.
Some of the new works, I think, at a show you have.
Oh, there's tulips, yes.
God, that's beautiful.
It's interesting. What you're seeing now is derived from photography. I used to use photography as a tool. It has now become a force. I mean, I photograph, I'm involved with National Geographic, I get images from all over. That's a 5-part calla lily that I did. That comes out of the computer, and it's on canvas. That one is about 30 inches. I want to make that at least 5 feet. I think that would be dynamite. You can see that, and it's very sensual. Go back to O'Keeffe and the same, you know, the flower and you know.
What about this one?
The power of the ocean. I just love, and I love changing the color. There's that purple in there in the ocean. It doesn't have to be green and blue, you know.
Now, people might criticize and say these are just blown-up photographs put right onto linen, put onto canvas.
Well, those people, for example, that I call meditation or misty. They're adapted, they're manipulated photographs. If you looked at the photograph,
yeah.
If you see this piece, it's a photograph, but it has a life of its own. You know, that's what I'm pushing for.
Now, we have a show in Los Angeles right now of David Hockney's works, photographs, different things. Is that the same kind of thing that you're known for?
Well, but he likes that kind of thing too. Yeah, you know, he works from photographs. He's done a lot of Polaroids, and my new work, I'm really pushing the computer to a point where I don't have a piece here, but there's a beach scene in Coney Island, which I love the San Francisco Impressionists, David Parks, etc. And this thing is reminiscent of that, but it's even pushed farther. It's not a photo, and yet people don't know what it is. Well, how did you do that?
It's a picture of people at Coney Island, and it's kind of misty.
No, it's manipulated. It has a painting quality.
Like Bruegel?
Maybe, to some degree, yeah.
A contemporary Bruegel, and they have on bathing suits.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to push the envelope between photography, computer, and the exciting time of wide format printing on canvas.
How long have
or watercolor paper.
How long have you been doing this?
3 years.
And how did you get your first show? You have a show at the O'Melveny Gallery, which is a big deal.
I met Don at his gallery in Melrose, and we got talking, and I brought some work in. And he says, oh, go see my curator down in San Pedro. I think it fits that better. And he gave me a show.
Now, he's the grandson of the lawyer O'Melveny and Myers.
His great-great-grandfather started O'Melveny and Myers.
His great-great-grandfather?
Great-great.
Because they were really the first lawyers to really set up shop in Los Angeles.
And he's a writer and does screenplays. He went into the creative area because I'm not sure why, but his father was involved in House of Packaging, who did all of Fred Heyman's packaging. So I knew them from another point 6 years ago, from another point of view. I just never got to meet Don and didn't know he was in the creative end.
How do you feel about the art gallery business, being exposed to it now for the first? Oh, look, here's your door.
There's a blue door, yes. That was shot in Sag Harbor, actually. And, you know, I used that it was in my portfolio, and now I've turned it into a piece of art.
It's beautiful, and it's a life size. Isn't it almost the size of a real door?
Yes, it's 6.5 feet high.
I think it's now in some commercial building in Southern California. Now, tell me about art galleries. Oh, there's your screen.
Yeah, I love screens.
How big is that?
That's probably 7 feet wide and 6.5 feet high.
And that one?
That's New York at Night.
And now, did you take that photograph?
Yes.
You took it? You went to Times Square and took the picture, and then did you put in your own colors?
I manipulated in the computer, yes.
What about this one?
This one was gotten from Italy, from Uffizi. It's Primavera by Botticelli. Someone wanted this, and I said, I'll make you a screen, but I didn't get the money, so I own it. They didn't buy it.
Well, is it hard to get an agreement for people to use their photographs?
No.
You have to buy
money.
them?
No, you pay a fee or whatever it is. No, you can negotiate that.
Now, this is the third time I've tried to ask this question. What do you find about gallery owners, and what's it like, the gallery business, after the design business?
Well, I've been thinking about that because I've had a few shows. In case I had one show at Molly Barnes several years ago, and we did sell a screen to a famous musician, and it was the Zebras, only he wanted 7.5 feet high, so I built a new one. As my business person, I'm saying, what is going on here? How am I going to sell this stuff? He said, no more consignment. I said, well, how can you possibly do that? I mean, it is consignment when you put your artwork into a gallery. I'm not used to that because when I design something, whether it be for Revlon or Polly Bergen, you got paid for it. Many times you had to fight for the money, but, you got paid. You got paid.
Yeah,
you eventually got paid. If I don't sell a piece of art, I'm on to the next thing,
Well, a gallery traditionally takes 50%.
Right.
In doing that, they agree to promote your work, to send out an announcement, to have a party, hopefully get you to some museums or people that will buy the art. Did you find that a disappointment in some of the galleries you've been with?
No, the O'Melveny Gallery, we got a lot of press, in the San Pedro, Long Beach, in that area, and no, I was pleased with that. I'd love to do another gallery sort of on the west side. That would be wonderful.
Well, I'm sure you'll do that. You've only been in business 3 years, and you've already...
Actually, I've only been building these things for about a year. It took 2 years to develop some of the concepts.
And how do you know they won't fade? I know Hockney was very worried to give out his things or to sell them because he was afraid that the color wasn't true. It would disappear.
That's why I'm saying it's so exciting to deal with the wide format printing of today, because color will last 200. Epson says, and they do a lot of printing, color will last 200 years. They use archival inks, and it's right on. Of course, we don't know that.
What's a G-clay print?
A G-clay, okay. Iris, it's a wide format, it's inkjet printing. However, Iris was the first one to develop this process, and they've coined the name G-clay. You know, mine are G-clays, done by somebody else, but I can't call them G-clay because.
Now I heard from your notes that you're going to be teaching. Tell me about that.
Oh well, okay. I've always wanted to. You know, I love to share information, and when this opportunity came up at Learning3 University, at first I said, well, I'll teach seniors because I just didn't know anything about it. And they said, well, no, we want you to come over and we'll talk about, let's design a course. And we came up with a collage course. So I'm going to teach a collage course in September, and hopefully they'll be, usually they're professionals. There will be some little old ladies that want to work in beads, which will be fine. I have to stay away from computers until we find out if people have computers, because that's a fun way to get involved in collage with scanning and scanning real stuff and cutting it out and putting it on. I mean, computer is another major tool, and that's how I'm using it.
Mauro, do you think that people who are artists are different than business people
Absolutely.
or ordinary people?
Absolutely.
Why?
We live on one side of the brain. In fact, I was thinking about that. I was talking to an artist the other day, and he had said to me, it's not about money. And I said, it is about money. However, what happens, you know, we think about the money, but then we get over on the right-hand side of the brain, and we're into our art, forget the money, you know? And yet, after we do the art and we hang it in a gallery, then we think about the money again. But we don't think about the money first. Second, it comes first, and then second, and then what happens, and there are several artists that really know how to market their art. That's what an artist has to do. I mean, it's really about marketing today.
Do you think it's necessary for an artist to have a good personality?
Absolutely.
What do you mean?
Absolutely. People, I think it goes along with their art. Jackson Pollock said, you are your art. And I look at Pollock, I love it. He is crazy, and his art is crazy, but it's unbelievable. You know, most people think it's just a lot of scribble, but if you look at it, he was drawing with those big things, you know, it's amazing.
Well, my own experience has been that mediocre artists often are so needy for attention that they don't ever ask you how you're doing. You could fall down on the floor and they'd still be talking about their work.
I had two artists call me this week. I said to my wife, I said, all he talked about is 3 shows, and I don't even know where the places are. He didn't even ask me how I was. So I said, well, I'm busy this weekend.
So you find that the successful artists know how to play the game correctly.
Absolutely.
At least ask how you're doing, pretend to be interested.
I mean, my friend Jim Morphesis, if he called, we would be talking about us, you know? It's different. You're right. You're
and I also
right.
find that artists have never get bored. Artists always get up in the morning. What's next? And they never get
Absolutely.
old.
Absolutely
the body may
right.
give out, but as long as they can hold that brush up, they're going to keep going.
I have a cousin who I just saw a few days ago, and I said, well, how's your work going? Well, he's depressed, blah, blah, the whole thing. I said, get a camera, go out and photograph. And I've used this several times. I do it myself. If I run into problems, pick up a camera, go out and photograph. Whatever you want to photograph, get involved in that, whatever it is out there, and it gets you out of your head. And also you have to work on the camera. And all of a sudden, you shoot this beautiful flower, and you're looking at it, and there it is, and you're happy again.
What do you want to do in the next 5 years? What do you see yourself doing?
I would love to continue with the concept that I have of photography, computer, and this, what's going on in digital printing, you know, fine art imaging on canvas or watercolor paper, and develop it further. I want to develop my art further through the computer. I can paint, but I don't want to paint. I want to work with this thing.
Do you think it's necessary to have good titles for pieces of art?
I like to. You know what? I don't think about the people. I think about me. For example, the one with the the trees and the mist, I'm turned on. I called it misty, and yet that's so stupid. And then someone said, it feels like, you can sit in front of it and meditate. So let's call it meditation. Yes.
That's really nice.
Yeah, I like that.
Do you find that you're getting more and more into abstraction or the idea of three-dimensional work?
Absolutely.
Why?
Because that's what I've always done. Even in art school, you always want to push the envelope. All my illustrations were very much like Jerome Schneider, where you put, well, Cockney does it when he tries to, Cubism. It came from Cubism. You distort. I keep trying to distort the image. I want you to see the image, but I want to distort it.
Have you worked in wood, or is there any interest
Well,
in that?
in the 70s, I worked in wood. They were wood collages. I would collect driftwood from, the first part was Catalina. Went out there on a boat with the family and collected all this beautiful flat woods, sailboats that crashed or whatnot. And here was this big sheet that had been out in the water for God knows how long. And I would make big wood collages out of that. They were abstract paintings. That's what they were in wood.
We have no more time, so I'm going to ask you a one-word question. Do you believe in God?
Yes, I do.
Does it come through your art?
Yes.
Thank you, Mauro. This has been wonderful talking to you. I've learned a lot, and I hope the audience has.
Thank you very much.
Art is not for everyone. It never has been. It never will be. For those of you who love it like we do, we want to turn you on. I'm Molly Barnes.